Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of a series of webinars entitled AI Talks at the ETUI. My name is Aida Ponce del Castillo, and I'm going to be your host today. And today we have a special guest from Canada, Rabih Jamil. He is a lecturer in sociology of work and organization. He is affiliated with GREPS, a Montreal-based research group on employment, poverty, and social protection. Rabih's interest research focused on the transformation of work, digital capitalism, surveillance technologies, and worker self-organizing practices. He also has been conducting ethnographic fieldwork among Uber drivers for more than 5 years, and this is something that he will talk about during this talk. Rabih, he has a long-standing experience, more than 15 years of professional research in the areas of socioeconomic development, refugee economic integration, and the organization of informal workers. Today's topic is about Uber and what's behind the trip, what's behind the trips that maybe you have taken some time. And with that, Rabih, please welcome, you have the floor.
Thank you, Aida. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for the colleagues and the attendees. I'm going to share my presentation. I'm going to have a PowerPoint presentation. So please. So it's fine. You're able to see my. Perfect. So as you just mentioned, my presentation today will be based on my doctoral research in the city of Montreal. I will not be speaking on the specific context of Montreal, but also about Uber organization in general. My main question for today is what lies behind Uber promise of free, unsupervised, and autonomous driving experience? What we should expect, what is happening when from the moment we click on the Uber icon till the moment we leave the car, what happened what happens in the application. So first I'm going to talk about some element of context. Then we will speak about Uber as a mass production of transportation services. We will go over the lifespan of a trip on different phases, what lies behind an Uber trip. Here we will be speaking more in specific about the sensor nervous system of the Uber application, and also the provider client, or what I would like to I like always to mention or to describe as having the HR manager in your back seat while driving for Uber. Can we talk about an Uber all-seeing eye, a cyber-physical structure, and a socio-political construction? But first, let me start with some element of context. As I previously mentioned, this research is part of my doctoral studies. My biggest research objective was to unpack Uber black icon. Back in 2017, Uber was still new in the market. We were not so familiar of it, and I wanted to understand what is this black icon that we are downloading on our phones. So I started with some basic questions: how to understand the Uber organization? Is it a new version of taxi companies, or a software development firm or technology firm, because this is also remains as one of the most debatable issues related to Uber. What does it mean to be the world taxi operator without owning a single car? Why Uber does not need to own a car, one single car, but what Uber own instead? What happens when I open the application to hail a car? The second main question, what does it mean to work as a paid driver for Uber? Who drives for Uber and why? How autonomous are the drivers? Are they subordinated employees or independent contractors? Where has the supervisory role gone? And finally, how does Uber manage to expand into the global market while not able, pardon, there is a, in the slide, while not generating profits? Today, we will be focusing more on the technological aspect of Uber, and I will finish by some key questions about the socio-political construction. But first, we need always to remember that Uber is a multi-product and multi-sided organization. So when I first started to work on Uber, they had only Uber X, which is what they call it, the Uber, the ride-sharing service. And now they have a multiple of services present, and the availability of services differ from market to another. And also they deal with different sides in the market, like they control demand and supply for the same service, as with Uber Eats, for example. So they are dealing with restaurants and the clients, clients and delivery workers, which is different than the Uber X context. So we need to take this into consideration. However, regardless of the service provided by Uber, Uber remains at the center of interactions between the service professional and the buyer of these services. It has three main relations. The first is the contractual relationship between Uber and the drivers. And here I'm talking specifically in the context of Uber X. And they are classified as partners. There is another type of relation, commercial relation between Uber and passengers. And we have the back office infrastructure, optimizing the service and ensuring a flawless matchmaking between demand and supply, structured around speed, anticipation, and the provision of services, like how we are able to get into an Uber car in 5 minutes and even less. Throughout this process, we need to keep in mind that as an intermediary role, as an intermediary in this service relation, Uber possess the technological infrastructure to document all kind of interaction that being realized throughout this process. All kind of interactions are captured, are transmitted, they are codified, processed, and reused as input data to further rationalize and optimize the production of the transportation service. In this process, Uber monopolized the power over both the drivers and the passengers. And we could discuss this further. Any questions? To able to better understand this, what lies, to answer the questions, what lies behind an Uber trip, I subdivided each trip into a series of sequential actions that construct the cyber-physical assembly line cycle of a trip. So we have three situational phases. First, the pre-matching. And by pre-matching, I mean from the moment we take our phone, we click on the Uber application, we start to receive a pop-up list of previously visited places, an interactive snapshot of nearby active drivers, an estimated time of arrival and estimation of upfront price, and also identification of a pickup spot. This starts from the moment we take our phone, and it ends from at the moment we are matched with a driver. Throughout, typically this should take no more than a few seconds, than a couple of seconds. However, in parallel, that we have two sets of algorithms of smart machines that are operating. Set of algorithms running a car location indexing engine, which is able to locate, identify, and dispatch the best available driver. Once a driver accepts this ride, hail this phase, and as matchmaking takes place. In this process, we need to mention that Uber algorithmic apparatus automates the collection and processing of information about both riders and drivers, thus ensuring a real-time demand forecasting and maintain its ability to mobilize drivers accordingly. Throughout this process, also this phase, Uber maintains the upper hand over the bundle of decisional actions, and both users must abide by its rationalized decision and accept them in order to proceed in the encounter, despite having some difference in the power between riders and passengers, between riders and the driver. The second situational phase is the matching, which we could subdivide it into two subphases: the pre-boarding, which between the moment that we are matched with driver and directly before getting into the car. And also Uber decision engine and Uber algorithmic apparatus manage different series of actions. In the pre-boarding phase, we could receive updates on the driver's route and arrival time, information about security measures and how we ensure our security, how we identify how we ensure that we are going into the right car, possibility to change the pickup location within a predefined perimeter, and the right to cancel the ride, the right to cancel the ride free of charge in a 5-minute time. But also, most importantly, during this phase, as passengers, we will have the right to access the driver's digital profile on the application, where they present themselves, that we could read their driving history, their evaluation, their rate, the previous comment, the previous complaints against them. So the moment we get into the car, we could have a lot of information about our driver. The second subphase is the face-to-face interaction, which is started from the moment we are in the car till we leave the car. And here Uber also algorithmic apparatus suggest and update the best possible route with the possibility of adding stops. And this is something very important in the management of the trip, because drivers are highly encouraged to follow the proposed routing by Uber engines. Also, the algorithmic apparatus document and process driving habits, speed, braking, phone use, ID checking. So we could say that during this phase, all kinds of interactions are being captured, coded, and used as input data to optimize the production of the service. And lately, Uber introduced the possibility to record the discussion between drivers and passengers. Also, it provided drivers with safety and security instructions and record interactions throughout the trip and manage complaints in real time. So if you have complaints in during the trip, you could send your complaint and then you receive the decision in real time. The last phase is about post matching, and it starts from the moment we reach end destination, and it lasts till the moment we confirm the final price, and we participate in the 5 stars rating. So it includes the mutual rating, the final pricing with the possibility of adding tips, customer service management, like all kind of claims, deduction, complaints, driver performance ranking. We will see later in this presentation how we could receive notification about the type of music, the professionalism, the cleanliness of the car, the conversation, all kind of interaction, and decide on disciplinary actions and implement real-time remediation or retroaction, especially in the case of first deduction, or for example, even in some cases, we will see here from the data I collected, drivers might be blocked from accessing the Uber network. However, now what lies behind these actions? We could, as passengers, we are able, if we make some research, if we give more attention to our interaction with the application, we are able to see it. But what lies behind? What is working behind all this process? First, we need to understand that Uber has a sensor nervous system that is based on 2 types of intelligence: sensor intelligence, and here I'm talking about the micro sensors embedded within the smartphones, like the accelerometer, the gyrometer, the cameras, the touch screen. By appropriating functionalities of microsensors embedded within drivers' smartphones to capture the overall mobility patterns, driving habits, adversary behavior, and the use of spoof applications, if it was the case. But also, at the same time, Uber, it has a location sensor intelligence. Optimize Uber ability to continuously track the geographical positions of each active user, whether a driver or a rider, and other properties such as the directions, the capacity of the car, and the trip status. In this GIF image, this is Uber GIF image. It shows how Uber enhanced and improved the GPS tracking systems. Uber has their own GPS tracking system, which is much better and much enhanced than the GPS tracking system that we normally use. In the second picture, this is Earth according to Uber algorithmic apparatus, because Uber, they have their own geospatial geospatial location system, which is called H3, which allow them to geolocate any user until 1 square meter wherever there is a wherever Uber is being operating. So the app decision engine operate a real-time dynamic database, which I already spoke about, car location indexing, for the ensemble of location points registered for each driver. The best available car location from all stored location of active drivers in each hexagon, which is the geospatial system. And this is how Uber managed to reduce the estimated time of arrival, and also they have their own system of batch matchmaking. How the systems are, how we could see the system in practice. For example, they are highly used in the price surging. Price surging is where when the Uber system increases the fares proportionally to the demand, as we see in the first picture. Like, for example, we might have in a very close area 2 different prices. So prices might differ in 2 closest area, and this differ from hexagon to hexagon according to the geospatial system, but also taking into account a multitude, a larger set of variables into account. But these systems are used, we could see them in the price, are very useful to the price surging activity. Also, this is how Uber keep the drivers informed about being watched and fueling the emotional stress and the driver frustration. This is, for example, in the first picture, how Uber inform drivers about their driving time, the maintenance of their profiles, ensuring improving their digital reputation, asking them to take part in the face ID check and face recognition practice, documenting their driving habits. And as we see in this picture, they could send you a report about your acceleration, braking, and speed. And this is something very important to keep drivers in abiding by the Uber regulations, and also about the fare deduction. They are used to the fares deduction. Also, another part of this is when we speak about the mutual rating. The moment we finish our ride, then we will be asked to rate our driver. The driver also will be asked to rate passengers. However, there is a huge difference between both. As we see in picture A, the driver was asked to rate me, to give me the rate. Automatically, I'm having 5 stars as a passenger. So he might downgrade my rating. However, when I'm asked to rate a driver, he's automatically has 0 stars, and I'm gonna up from 0 to 5. So this also shows us the power imbalance in the system. And this 5 stars rating system is one of the most powerful disciplinary tools embedded in the Uber model. And we will see later how it works. And this is how what generates the 5 stars system, because the 5 star system it transforms riders as surveillance agents in the backseats. Activating riders as quality assurance inspectors provides Uber with the opportunity to have a thick description of the driver's behavioral qualities, interactions, and socializing. This is how the utility of the badges in evaluating the performance of drivers. And as we see from this compilation of badges, now more and more drivers are asking to have. I met drivers who ask me to give them comments, to give them badges rather than tips, because they need to develop and improve and enhance their digital reputation. Also, how these automated data collection and this surveillance system is being used. Also, riders as a surveillance agent in the backseat. We see how we could receive as drivers reports on music, conversation, comfort, professionalism, deduction of fares, and even, for example, like quality of the bumper of the tires of the car based on client evaluation. All this take us to our final question. Can we say that Uber possesses an all-seeing eye over the market? Uber perfect eye. In fact, Uber perfect eye is the result of a complicated setup that combines several sets of codes, algorithms, physical objects like car, smartphone, phone mounting stands, servers, data centers, mobile network, and cell phone towers. And of course, living subject like data scientists, engineers, marketplace managers, front office staff, drivers, and riders. Uber surveillance machinery functions through a variety of surfaces of contact. We could say smartphone screen, keyboards, cameras, and motion sensors between living and non-living subjects. These points of contacts are crucial for feeding the algorithmic engine of Uber surveillance machine and creating a user data double, like a user data double. In French, we say le doublon, a user data double. Each one of us has our data double present in the Uber system. The continuously watched, geolocated, indexed, inspected, and disciplined drivers are becoming a sort of information machines, completely alienated from their own bodies that produce the raw material data used as input feeding the automated decision system at Uber. In order to better understand this system, I compare it to a panoptic surveillance or algorithmic powered panopticon, which I called in one of my articles algopticon. So in their cars, at the peripheries, drivers are continuously watched with limited ability to see beyond the information in the flow channeled by the application. Meanwhile, at the center, an automated surveillance and control system possess the capacity to watch without being watched. Using telematics, Uber combined decentralized monitoring, capturing of behavioral activities and control with the centralized automated organization of the labor process and the disciplinary decision machine. Uber, we need to keep in mind that Uber, and not only Uber and other organizations in the digital platform, in the platform economy, they have the technological ability to observe, track, influence, control, and discipline in real time the behavior of millions of users in hundreds of cities around the world. They do not own any single car. Uber does not own any single car, but Uber facilitates the leasing of hundreds and thousands of cars to drivers. And Uber owns one of the largest network of data centers in the world, costing hundreds of millions of USD dollars per US dollars per year. After the pandemic, they are migrating now to the cloud technology in a partnership with Oracle. One final thing also to note about Uber, that they have their own program, UP3, to accelerate the integration of new technologies and to acquire new patents. One of the things that I looked into is the Uber database of patents and how they are using the patents and how AI is explicitly present all over the function or the operation of Uber. Lately, in 2023, Uber was testing a patent, is testing a patent to pre-assess, to pre-match riders and drivers prior to the hailing of the car. So before I take my phone to hail a ride, Uber would like to pre-match me with a driver based on the my history data, the history of my usage history, and other metrics. This is how a new year will look to Uber across the world. Finally, can we reduce an Uber-like organization to a simple technological innovation? Can we limit Uber profits to registered revenues in cash? How do we approach the accumulation of data of the global market of individualized transportation? It's very important when we deal with Uber-like organization to avoid the approach that reduce the role of this organization into a pure technological dimension. We need to keep in mind that Uber is the wolf of venture capital. They are the organization. Uber is the organization that received most of the venture capital during the last 10 years. They operate on a model of regulatory entrepreneurship, operating under austerity governance on the basis of don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness strategies. Their business model their expansion strategy is structured around the violation of regulations in the market. They maintain the upper hand over the technological advancement through all their technology investment in the technology and through thousands of data scientists, engineers that works for Uber, and also in coalitions and through acquisition. They are a multi-sided intermediary business model, as I spoke earlier, and they are a hyper outsourcing, as Nick Cernisek identified, beyond the cost of the manpower. So Uber does not only outsource the cost of the manpower, but also it outsources an important cost of the production, namely the means of production, which and this is why they do not need to own the cars, because the Uber model of employment oblige workers to procure some key means of production in order to be employable. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Rabih, for this absolutely fantastic. Yes, you want to say something?
I'm fine. I'm just. I will keep. I will.
Yes.
Should I keep the share or?
Yes.
Okay.
Or well, maybe you can bring them down so we can see our faces. And if we need to bring the slides back, you can do it at any time. Thank you so much for bringing this into our eyes all the way from Canada. This has been absolutely fantastic, and I wanted really to share this with my audience here, mostly in Europe. But I know that there are some people in the rest of the world who are connecting to this AI talk as well. So your talk is absolutely comprehensive, and I have a couple of questions, because what I'm really interested about is how algorithmic decision-making is done, what type of surveillance mechanisms are behind decision-making, what are those decisions or those technological mechanisms that are very significant in order for a decision to take place. Because in Europe, we are worried about this automated decision-making and what is a significant decision. My question to you is, based on the series of sequential actions that construct the whole cycle of the trip, what are these key actions that are key for building a driver's profile? Or, and I put it in another way, what are those key actions or interactions that are crucial for making a significant automated decision?
The key actions by Uber?
By the driver. What are the actions that make a decision, an automated decision, important to make then a profile for the driver?
Okay. The problem is that when we use Uber, from the moment we download the application and we click on accept, we give the application, we give the company the authorization to make automated decision on our behalf. So for me, I can't imagine Uber without automation, without automated decision making system. For drivers, for example, one of the key features of the Uber system is the blind acceptance rate. And this is something very important because drivers until recently, because I stopped my field work a while, like 1 year ago, until recently, drivers didn't enjoy the opportunity to know the end destination. So sometimes you accepted a ride where you have, and this happened to me also, you have to drive for like 10 kilometers to pick up a passenger for a 2 kilometers trip. And this is a purely automated decision. In fact, when we go and I need to mention that one of the most important sources of information and knowledge for this presentation is the Uber engineering channel on YouTube, which is managed by Uber data scientists and engineers, and it published their informations in their works. In one of the presentation, an Uber official was mentioning that all their system is based on taking out the human out of the loop. So the decision where to work and when to work is somehow controlled by the automated decision. So this is why I speak in one of my article about a kind of illusion of freedom, illusion of having no boss, illusion of having no supervision, because all these actions are embedded within the applications and they are run by algorithm in the background. Don't know if I answered your question,
more or less.
but for Uber drivers, in order to build their digital reputation and to build their profile, and even what I say, to survive on the Uber network, to maintain their active status as users, they need to abide by Uber directives. And further we read about Uber, further, the most I read and I learn about Uber from Uber itself, the more I discover how they macro manage their market. For example, Uber has specific and detailed directive about in-car drivers' behavior. You have to smile. You have to wear to have clean clothes. You have to provide bottles. You are encouraged to ask passengers about the type of music they like, about air condition. You need to avoid going into heated discussions. You must upload fun fact about yourself in your digital profile. Present yourself as a positive person. All these actions, all these profiles are abiding by Uber directives.
My question was related to automated decision making and what makes an automated decision significant, because I asked the question because here in Europe, we are trying to regulate algorithmic management through the Platform Work Directive. And this is one of the prerequisites to have a significant decision. You have partly answered the question, and I would like, the other part of the directive says that more or less that the drivers can have a kind of the right to know what type of decisions are being made on them, and then hence a type of a right of redress. Do you think that that Uber drivers know all the type of decisions that are made on them? No. Why?
No. And for me, it's not, and because the relationship between Uber drivers and Uber is somehow exclusive via the information channel embedded in the application. And for the taking into account the quality of not the quality, the reality of the driving work, you could not, while driving, you could not access into your application. You do not read. You need to focus on, for safety measures, you need to focus on the driving. So they don't have, and also some of the people I met, they don't care. They are not aware about the importance of these decisions, because when you tell them, because how they define Uber, and this is something also very important for them, Uber is a source of revenue, a source of additional revenue. Uber is the opportunity to cash in some money when you need. And this is something very important in the motivation. Why Uber, not other not other platforms? Because the entry conditions and the exit conditions are minimal in Uber. And this is something very important to note. So I believe that we have a lot of work to do when it comes to reducing the opacity of these algorithmic automated decision-making systems, because what they do, when they do it, and for what reasons. This is something very important. What kind of data they record, they capture, how they use these data. But also, to answer your question, it's not enough to oblige Uber to make this public. We need
Transparent.
to
Yeah.
ensure, yeah,
This is
pardon.
one of the questions of our public. What do you think about transparency of the algorithm?
Yeah,
data? Yeah.
yeah. It's very important when we use the word making making this system more transparent and more public, but how and to whom? Making these systems more transparent to the public is something very important, but making them accessible for workers, for drivers, is much more important, and it's a different level, because we need to ensure that the drivers, it's not important for me as a user or as a researcher to know about it. It's my job to know about it, to try to understand it. But how we will ensure that the driver in the state of Montreal is aware about this, how these systems are operating. Uber is cutting on these possibilities by, for we need also to keep that these are ununionized workers. They do not have unions. They do not enjoy the right to collectively organize and to collectively bargain. So they are individualized, fragmented in the market, isolated in their cars, and the only channel to receive information is by Uber.
Rabih, thank you so much. I will bring some questions from the audience. And the first one that I have is actually two questions from Fernando Rocha in Spain. He asks if you have analyzed interactions of Uber drivers where they share the problems or concerns in performing their jobs, for example. Maybe they communicate with each other via messengers or WhatsApp.
Yes. An important part of I didn't speak about my methodology, but an important part of my methodology is a digital observation of exchanges between drivers. In fact, I documented two types: the digital interaction between drivers in two phases. When Uber was illegal in Montreal, and they used the WhatsApp and instant messaging group, and this was very important and very powerful way to ensure protection and security in the field. And after the regulation of Uber, they moved to Facebook, and this was a very important platform, their public page platform, to exchange about. I even wrote about this and categorized the utility of these online platforms. These online platforms, I could say, they are very important to provide them with capacity building information, because Uber does not provide the minimum about this. Market information, information about Uber promotions and directives, information about the updates, because when the application is being updated, then some of the challenges is how to manage, how to handle these updates. Information about the security on the road, the challenges that they face, about revenues, when to work, all these information about incidents, harassments, mutual aid, mutual support. All these they were. However, I had two observations and two notes. First, this platform, because it was public, it was accessible by Uber officials, and it was monitored by Uber officials. So any kind of discussion that might be identified by the admin of this page as non-abiding by Uber measures it will be automatically shouted out as unproductive, ungood, unhealthy discussion and silenced. The second observation, that suddenly out of nowhere, this platform was erased from Facebook. So, and later when we spoke, and when I asked in Montreal drivers, and then I heard that it was blocked upon the request of the company, because it was identified as a defamation platform. So I'm not. This is the rumor I heard in the field, or the information I had in the field, but from the field. But this is one of the risks about it.
A couple of questions related to the algorithms that Uber use. And have you analyzed the potential discriminatory biases of the Uber algorithm in your research? And one question from Frank Pot in the Netherlands, where he asks about transparency of algorithms in Canada. Is there anything more specific about obliging or mandating companies to make the algorithms transparent in the Canadian law? We have some sort of already case law here in Europe, but we would like to see what's the situation in Canada.
Yeah, I didn't analyze the bias or the discriminatory part of the algorithmic decision, but I read a lot about this. We know that in the early beginnings of Uber, in the early years of Uber, this was highly observed. So we know that this existed before. I didn't do it. One of the one of the practices that I did in my field work, because after 6 months in the fieldwork, I realized that most of the drivers that are men. There is no woman drivers in the field. So I start using passenger account of women to see if there is some kind of bias in the decision in the dispatching, and I didn't find any material that will allow me to make analysis about this. So no. Talking about the law with the jurisprudence, and also about this, I believe that in Canada we are still a little bit behind Europe, especially in this aspect. I already mentioned this earlier with you, Aida, that when it comes to the regulation, we are still, because we are still behind. Let me say that we are still, we still need to do a lot about this.
Okay. We can have another conversation about what are the regulatory needs in Canada another time. Yeah. Please, to the audience, type your questions on the Q&A while I ask Rabih another one. Here is from Daniel Koster from ITUC, which is the International Trade Union Confederation. And he asks, are the algorithms available to the drivers or to the passengers? Like, what do you mean, Daniel? Public available, like given to the drivers? Could one request them? Any instance of public regulations or trade union oversight over there? Do you have answered already that question?
Yeah, I might have, thank you, Daniel. If I well understood your question, Uber operates a open source. They started to make their codes open to the public. They publish it on GitHub, so it might be some of their algorithms might be accessible for the public. I didn't try to do this. I do not have the knowledge to deal with codes, and so, but I know that some of their algorithm is accessible, and almost all their operations are being published. They publish about their systems and operation and how it requires a lot. Like, I spent 1 year of my life reading only data scientists for Uber data scientists and watching their videos in order to be able to digest this technological advancement. Because for me, this is very different from my area of specialization. So it's required this.
All right. And going again to the what algorithms do, is there any type of human oversight? Raquel Ruiz asks, are driver qualifications reviewed by a real human or a human being?
Also, again, from the discussion on the Facebook page, at some point they have some human review, but not for the qualifications, because the qualification is but it exists, but it's not easier to get access to it, because one of the main challenges that when they receive this generic responses from the application, and then you need to go further, like you need to do more steps to reach into the human supervision or review.
Like how many steps? Sorry to interrupt, because this is something that comes back into the EU proposed directive, like that drivers can have access to a human review. So in your experience,
I don't have the steps. I don't have the steps, but I know that it's not so easy and not so accessible. It was not so accessible. Maybe now the situation changed, but it was not so accessible. And during the pandemic, situation get even worse. Yeah. Also, like I read a question about recording.
Yes.
Did I understand well that Uber records? Yes. Is this legal? We have a lot of questions about this, about the legality of what these organizations are doing. There is a huge questions about the legality, but what we know is that as passengers, this is something very important. As passengers, we received notification that we could record the conversation if we feel that we need it for security reasons. Drivers, they have the same right to record the conversation also. So both passengers and the drivers are pushed into this practice. And this is something very important here, and I would like to nuance the differences. Because if a passenger would like to record the conversation, the driver will not automatically be informed. However, if the drivers would like to record, the passenger will be automatically notified. And this goes also into the balance of power between passengers and riders throughout this process.
There is a question from Philippe
Yes.
Freeman, Rabih, that says, could you say anything about the overlap between algorithmic methods of labor discipline and more traditional ones, such as the flexi-buy schemes and third parties run?
I'm not sure that I understand well the flexi-buy.
Maybe Philippe, if you're still listening, can you please clarify your question in the chat, please, while we take one of the last questions about an anonymous attendee. At the one hand, Uber takes distance of every form of accountability. The workers are pretty much fully responsible for everything as being a partner. At the other hand, all data generated by those independent partners, they say, is their ownership, that Uber owns their data. And they use it, they sell it, they share it. The riders can't do really anything about that. What is your view on that? What do you see? Do you see a way to make this more fair? And my own question is, do you believe on data ownership?
Well, this is a big question. But I will say that until now, Uber is not selling data. Until now, Uber is not selling the data. Until now, what we know that Uber is using and optimizing the data collected. This is why, as in several occasions, I mentioned that these data are used as input data to optimize the production and to rationalize the production. So they are not selling it until now. But one of the main observations that I have in my research, that when Uber says that they are the word taxi operator, that they don't have owning a taxi, I will say also that Uber is the world consultant on transportation and mobility, because Uber is the organization that possess the ability and the right to use a global database on transportation in 600 plus cities in the world. So they have all this wealth of data, and they are using it to improve their I will say, their control over the market. Passengers are not are so passive in this process. I truly believe that we need to work with passengers. We need also to raise the awareness of the passengers about their data that is being captured and used, and because also one thing about the passengers, they are not only passengers. Passengers are somehow instrumentalized as disciplinary agents. So they don't not only produce data for Uber, they produce data for Uber, but also they do effective role. They are evaluating and making providing the quality assurance for the driver's performance. They are like for all the driver performance is being conducted by drivers. So we need to look further into details about the passengers in this process. And I even yesterday I was talking with a colleague, and I mentioned that passengers are among the most under-researched population in the gig economy, passengers and clients. So yes, I mean this.
Yeah, data here is Dirk Gillis from Belgium. He says that data is actually their main capital, and they will not sell it anytime soon because that's their golden mine. And,
exactly. This is why they are not selling it, because also their business model is different than Facebook and Twitter or other platforms. This is their main capital. And thank you, Dirk, for this, because when Uber claim that they are not making profit, I argue that data is part of their profits and part of their capital. Because we need to stop with Uber-like organization. I believe and I argue that we need to stop define profits in cash. We need to define to improve our understanding of profits as a capital. And when we do it, when we take it from this approach, we find that data is improving their returns. Let me use the word returns, not profit. So in this discussion,
data in its forms and shape. And I will
yes, I think Philippe. I
will read it for the public. Son, I understand that Uber and third-party companies will rent cars to drivers along with other services. Philip wonders how this more traditional form of control fits also in what we call algorithmic management.
It fits very well, because like for example, now in Montreal, 6 months ago, we started to realize that there is a lot of Tesla model third model of Tesla 3 are being used as Uber car. So, and even like when we used to, in some of the research exercises, we went into the street and we start with my colleague to hail car, and we were in Tesla. And for me, like I would not believe that I will ever in my life be able to buy a Tesla. However, so as an Uber passenger, I was in Tesla and I start talking with them and asking them, and all these Teslas are like, through leasing contracts. And when we inquire more about this, we realize that Uber is facilitating this, is acting as some kind of guarantor, is because let me say they are facilitating these leasing contracts, and it fits very well because the moment you get this lease, you are obliged to work more on Uber to pay at least the lease, which costs, like for example, for Tesla, 24 to 2700 per month, Canadian dollars. So you need to work a lot. So you are entrapped with this. But legally, Uber is independent from this. It's the responsibility of both.
Right.
So, but it fits very well.
And a couple of last questions, Rabih.
Yes.
Looking at your algopticon, or what do you think it should be regulated?
Well, to give you a very short question without avoiding going into details, I believe Uber-like organizations are operating on the no permission. They do not need to get permission for everything. We need to regulate every single aspect of this algorithmic management. We need to define all kind of data that are being captured. We need to know what is being captured, how it's being used, and for which purposes, and we need to regulate it. One of the main slogans that these organizations are spreading all over the world, that privacy is history. It might be due to technological aspects or like technological advancement that they could access, they could breach into our privacy, they could take our data and use it, but we need to regulate it. We need to regulate each aspect of this. We need to know what kind of data they are looking to it. We need to break with this accept. Like one of the research that I would like to do, and I would like to make it, because also there is here two dimensions, Aida. Like there is a dimensions among the scholars community and the discussions in academia and with professionals, and also the what we say in French, the vulgarisation du savoir, how to make the knowledge more accessible to everyone. We need to demystify, deconstruct these contracts. The moment I click on accept, I authorize this organization with plenty of, I give them plenty of authority over my data. So we need to know this, and we need to regulate it. We need one of the main issues, for example, what they are going to do with it. They do not destroy these data. This is something very important. They do not destroy this data. One of the ideas that I was testing is that if now I erase the Uber application from my phone, I'm not out of Uber because my data double is still there. And here talking about the data ownership, who owns the data? The one who produces it or the one who process it? Part of this, what we need to also know is it part of the price? How the price is structured? Is it structured upon this pay subscription? Uber is not like Netflix. It's not like Prime, Amazon Prime. We do not pay a monthly subscription to get access into this network. Are we paying this